Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the Delhi edition of the in the newspaper dated 4th September 2019. So let us start our discussion.
Now, this article on page number 14 talks about the issue of dams which are being built by China in its Tibet region. And in this news article, the Chinese officials have denied that there will be no water storage projects in Tibet. Now, this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 under the topic International Relations, and it can also be a part of the General Studies paper 1 under the topic Geography of the World in the subtopic Resource Geography. So, in this article, let us try to understand what is the issue of dams which are being constructed by China in its Tibet region and how are they going to impact India. Now, first, let us look at the geography of the rivers which are flowing into India from China. Now, before understanding the geography, let us understand the importance of water resources for both these countries. Now, China and India account for 20% and 17% population of the world respectively. And as far as water resources are concerned, they account for only 7% of the world resources, and India has only 4% of the world's water resources. Now, in this background, China has shown its intention to triple its hydropower capacity. And it has also shown its intention that it will construct dam on various transboundary rivers to achieve the hydropower targets. And in this background, China has shown its intentions of constructing dams on the Yarlung Sangpo River, which enters into Arunachal Pradesh in India through the Great Syntaxial Band. And when it enters Arunachal Pradesh, it is known as Brahmaputra River, and after entering Bangladesh, it is known as the Jamuna River. Now, as these rivers are transboundary rivers and they are flowing from one country to other, there are serious contestations between the countries which are using the water. Now, if you look at the location of China, it is the only country in the region which is completely upper riparian, which lends it an unparalleled advantage and power to influence the flow of water to nations which are downstream. Now, as the source or the origin of the rivers is from China in the Tibet region, it is the upper riparian state. And as such, it has advantage and the power to influence the flow of water from its territory to the territory of India and the lower riparian countries like Bangladesh, etc. Now, what is the importance of this Tibet region as far as the water disputes between India and China are concerned? Now, as we know that China is in control of the Tibet region, and Tibet is home to the largest freshwater resources or reserves outside the North and the South Pole. And it is source of some of the Asia's most important rivers, which include the Indus River, the Ganga River, Brahmaputra River, Irrawaddy, Mekong, Yangtze, etc. And all these rivers are transboundary in nature. So that is why such a situation and location of Tibet becomes extremely important as far as transboundary water sharing is concerned. So in this background, let us understand which all dams are being constructed by China and what are the concerns which have been raised by India. Now, China has completed the Zangmu Dam, which is built on the upper reaches of Brahmaputra River in 2010. And it is planning to develop three more dams, which are the Dagu, Zaicha, and Ziksu. And these are presently under construction. So, if you look at the locations of the dams Ziksu, Zangmu, and Zaicha, these are located in the upper reaches of the river Brahmaputra. Secondly, the Zam hydropower station, which will be the largest dam on Brahmaputra, also commenced in 2015. However, as far as China's behavior is concerned, China admitted to the construction of this Zangmu dam only in 2010, and that too after serious denials, which means that China admitted that it was constructing such a dam after a lot of denials previously. And also, China has not yet officially communicated anything about the construction of other three dams, namely Dagu, Zaicha, and Ziksu on the Brahmaputra River. Further, China has built more dams on its rivers than the rest of the world combined. And yet, this country does not have any water sharing agreement or treaty with any of its neighbors, including India. And that is one of the biggest concerns which has been raised by India and other neighboring countries who share these transboundary rivers with China. Now, this lack of communication by China has created an atmosphere of suspicion and mistrust in India, and especially in the northeastern region of India. Further, China has indicated that three hydropower projects on the main stream of the Brahmaputra river in the Tibet Autonomous Region are approved for implementation. And all these projects are raising concerns for India. So, in this background, let us understand what are the concerns which have been raised by India. Now, as India is a lower riparian state, it is fully dependent on the water of Brahmaputra in its northeastern region. And that is why the government of India has consistently conveyed its view and concerns to the Chinese authorities. And the government of India has also urged them to ensure that the interests of the downstream states are not harmed by any activities in upstream areas, and especially the dam construction by the China. Now, as a response to the government of India, the Chinese side has conveyed that they are only undertaking run of the river hydropower projects, and such projects do not involve the diversion of waters from the Brahmaputra. Now, these projects are generally used for hydropower projects, however, the water is not stored in such kind of dams. However, India's concern is that such dams are large enough to be converted and used as storage dams. And if this possibility comes true, India will have less amount of water in its lean seasons. Also, in the monsoon season, if more water is released from these dams, there can be flooding in the Brahmaputra basin in Assam. Moreover, if dams are constructed in China, this silt can get trapped in these dams. And if this silt is trapped in the dams, it will not reach the lower riparian areas of Brahmaputra. And this silt is one of the most important for making the Brahmaputra basin fertile. So, as such, India has also raised this kind of apprehensions. Further, all these hydropower projects are located in highly volatile tectonic zones. And that is why in such an earthquake prone zone, such dams can lead to flooding during the earthquake events. Further, in its construction of dams, China has polluted the rivers. And the quality of water that flows downstream is also important for India. Further, if the natural flow of river is disrupted and the natural flood cycles is disrupted, it can have adverse impact on the biogeography, and it can have ecological concerns in India's northeastern region, which is one of the most ecologically important area for India. This is because majority of the forests of India are located in the northeastern region of India, which could be adversely affected by such dams. And last but not the least concern is that India has always been concerned about the Chinese claims on the Arunachal Pradesh. And if China builds dams, especially near the Great Bend or the Great Syntextual Bend, from where the rivers flow into India, through this, China could be seeking to leverage its claim over the India's state of Arunachal Pradesh. So India sees this construction of dams as a threat to its sovereignty in the Arunachal Pradesh in northeastern part. Now, all these points are important in the General Studies Paper 1 under the topic Resource Geography and what is the likely impact of construction of dams by China on the river Brahmaputra. Now, as a response to the Chinese construction of dams, India has also decided to commence the construction of 14 hydropower projects in Arunachal Pradesh, and most of these dams will be located on the lower path of the Brahmaputra river. Now, an interesting fact about the precipitation over the Brahmaputra basin is that it receives rainfall in two types, and these are simple rainfall during monsoons and snowfall. Now, as the Tibetan part is located in Himalayas, it receives less rainfall as compared to the southern part of basin, which is located in India and Bangladesh. And if you look at the flow of water, around 80% of the flows of Brahmaputra emerge within Indian boundary. Further, various issues relating to trans-border rivers are discussed with China under the ambit of an institutionalized expert-level mechanism which was established in 2006. And also, such discussions are being taken at the diplomatic levels. Further, another strength of India regarding the Brahmaputra basin is that Brahmaputra gets more water from its tributaries once it enters India. And these important tributaries are Dibang, Lohit and Subansiri. Now, as India is not the only riparian state, India can get support from other countries like Bangladesh, etc., and pressurize the Chinese government on having a river water sharing agreement. So the need of the hour is that India should have a river sharing agreement with China, and this goal can be reached if India lobbies with other lower riparian states who are dependent on rivers which flow from China into their territory. Now, if you look at the previous year questions which were asked in the mains examination, in the year 2018, there was a question related to the resources of Arctic region and what was India's interest in this region. So this question was asked in the mains examination from the resource geography and the political geography point of view. Similarly, this question related to South China Sea was asked in the General Studies paper 1, and this was also related to political geography and resources. So similarly, you can expect a question in the mains examination from this issue of dam construction and sharing of water of transboundary rivers in the General Studies paper 1. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, this article on page number 16 talks about the Cabinet's decision for allowing and approving higher procurement price for ethanol. So, this will fall under General Studies paper 3 under the topic Economic Development. So, in this article, we will try to understand what is the decision of Cabinet regarding this procurement process and what is the likely impact of this decision. So, now what is the Cabinet decision regarding the procurement process of ethanol by the oil marketing companies? Now here you should note that Indian government is running a ethanol blending program for petrol, and in this the ethanol which is produced by the sugar mills is procured by the oil marketing companies, namely the Indian Oil, Hindustan Petroleum, etc., and then this ethanol is blended with the petrol. So what the government has announced in this decision is an increase in the price of ethanol which is to be procured by these public sector oil marketing companies. And these increased prices will be applicable from December 1st for the 2019 and 20 supply year. Further, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has also allowed the conversion of old sugar into ethanol. Now, the next decision is that the CCA has approved the use of sugar and sugar syrup for the production of ethanol. And as the CCA has approved the use of sugar and sugar syrup for the production of ethanol, the mill owners can simply add the old sugar to the molasses which is used for manufacturing ethanol. Also, the new decision has increased the price of ethanol from C-heavy molasses and also from B-heavy molasses. Now, in the later part in this video, we will try to understand what is this C-heavy and B-heavy molasses. And further, the price of ethanol from the sugarcane juice, sugar and sugar syrup has been increased. So, the prices of procurement from all types of ethanols has been increased by the Government of India. So before understanding the impact of this decision of the Cabinet, let us try to understand how is ethanol produced. So simply the ethanol is produced from molasses, which is a byproduct of the sugar manufacturing process. So now what are the different stages in the production of ethanol and sugar? So simply the mills or the sugar mills crush the sugar cane, which has a total fermentable sugar content of about 14%. And out of this total fermentable sugar content, most of it is crystallized into sugar in the sugar mills. However, there is one part which is remaining, which is the uncrystallized part of it. And this part cannot be converted into sugar, and this is known as the C molasses. And this molasses can be used for producing ethanol. So this is the best case scenario where most part of the sugarcane juice has been converted into crystallized sugar and the uncrystallized part has been converted into C molasses. Now this is the best case scenario where the most part of the total fermentable sugar has been converted into crystallized sugar and the leftover part is converted into C molasses. However, there can be various intermediate stages before this stage is reached. For example, most part of this total fermentable sugar will not be converted into crystallized sugar and will be converted into uncrystallized form. And this represents different stages of molasses which are produced. So for example, if 1 ton of sugarcane is used, it will produce about 115 kg of sugar and 45 kg of molasses if this stage is reached, which means that this is the unrecoverable part and this is known as the C molasses stage. And from this C molasses, 10 liters of ethanol can be produced approximately. However, there can be another scenario where whole of the sugarcane is converted into molasses and no sugar is produced and it is completely converted into ethanol. So in that case, it will produce around 80 liters of ethanol approximately. And all the stages between these two extremes, where least amount of ethanol is produced in this stage and the most amount of ethanol is produced, there will be different stages, and these stages have been termed as A and B stages of sugar crystal formation, and these are known as the A stage molasses, B stage molasses, or the C stage molasses. So after this, let us try and understand what is the likely impact of this decision of the government of India. Now, since the government of India has increased the price for different types of ethanols, if the sugar mill owners try and convert entire sugarcane juice into ethanol, the price realized for them will be higher than the price which is realized by producing sugar. So there is an incentive that the sugar mill owners now produce more ethanol. And further, we know that the government has mandated it for the oil marketing companies under the ethanol blending program that they have to compulsorily blend 10% ethanol in the petrol. And also, currently, we know that there is a glut in the sugar market because the sugar mills are producing more sugar and there is less demand for the sugar. And that is why the prices of sugar are very less in the market. Further, as we know that India is an oil importing nation, so this ethanol blending program will benefit the sugar industry because the prices of sugar is likely to increase because the mill owners will produce less sugar now. And secondly, as India is an oil importing nation, and if the ethanol is blended to the petrol, the demand for oil will also decrease. And that will help India in reducing its dependence on the oil imports and will also be beneficial for the balance of payments of India. Now, as we have learned that there is overproduction of sugar in the market, and that is why the prices of sugar are very low. And due to this, the profit margins for the mill owners are very less. And in such a scenario, they are not able to make timely payments to the farmers of sugarcane. However, if because of this decision of the government, the prices of sugar increase, the mill owners will be able to make timely payments to the farmers who are producing sugarcane and delivering this sugarcane to these mill owners. So finally, the likely benefits are that there will be increase in the sugar prices. Secondly, the problem of overproduction of sugar can be stopped, and also there will be substitution for the oil imports, and which will have benefits for the balance of payments of India's current account. And finally, it is likely to benefit the farmers who are producing the sugar canes. So these are few aspects of the decision of the government of India for increasing the procurement prices of ethanol. With this, let's move to the next article. Now, this article on page number 2 talks about a RFID system which will be used for parking projects in Delhi. Now, the RFID simply refers to the radio frequency identification technology. And if you go through the previous year questions in the year 2015, a question was asked related to near field communication technology. So that is why one should be aware of such emerging technologies. So let us try and understand in this article what are the key features of the RFID technology. Now, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Science. So, RFID simply refers to the radio frequency identification technology. Now, in this technology, the digital data is encoded into tags which are known as RFID tags or smart labels or smart tags. Now, these RFID tags are used as fast tags at the toll taxes for collection of the tolls. So, simply the digital data is encoded into these RFID tags, and these are captured by a reader which uses the radio waves. So radio waves are emitted from these fast tags and which are captured by a reader which analyzes and captures the data from these tags. So this RFID technology is similar to the barcoding technology where the reader tries and captures data from the barcodes by using a reader. However, one of the major difference in the RFID and the barcoding system is that RFID tag data can be read outside the line of sight, whereas barcodes must be aligned with the optical scanner. Now, what this means is that the RFID tags are not to be scanned by the reader in the line of sight, and the reader and the scanner can be at a distance from the RFID tags. So, for example, if there's a car and the RFID tag is fixed on that car, the reader need not be in the line of sight of that tag to capture the data from the RFID. So in this line, let's understand how this technology works. So this technology belongs to a group of technology which is known as automatic identification and data capture technology. So what this does is that it automatically identifies objects, collects data about them, and enters those data directly into computer systems with little human intervention. And which waves of the electromagnetic spectrum are used by the RFID? So this uses the radio waves. Now there are three components in a RFID system. First is the RFID tag or a smart label. Second is an RFID reader or scanner. And the third is an antenna. Now these RFID tags contain an integrated circuit and an antenna. And this antenna transmits waves and data in the form of radio waves, which are captured by the RFID reader, which is known as an interrogator. And this reader converts the data which has been transmitted into radio waves into usable form of data. And from there it can be sent to the computer systems where the data can be stored and analyzed. So this is a simple technology. The point that needs to be understood is that it uses radio waves technology and the reader might not necessarily be in the line of sight. So these 2 points are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. Now to understand what kind of question can be asked from this technology, let us look at this question which was asked in the year 2015. The question was with reference to the near field communication technology, which of the following statements is or are correct? The first is that it is a contactless communication technology that uses electromagnetic radio fields, which is correct. Second is NFC is designed for use by devices which can be at a distance of even a meter from each other, which was incorrect for the near field communication. So it is important that the reader is in line of sight or not for any kind of identification technology. The third statement is that the NFC can use encryption when sending sensitive information, which was also correct. Hence the correct answer is 1 and 3, that is C only. So you can expect a similar question on the RFID technology, and this was covered in the prelims compass of 2019. So at the end of today's discussion, we will have a question on this technology. With this, let's take up the next article. Now, this article on page number 17 is related to the recommendations of a committee which was created under the chairmanship of Secretary Economic Affairs to consider the various issues which are relating to the development of financial technology or the Fintech sector in India and how this sector can be leveraged in Indian economy. Now, this committee has recently submitted its recommendation, and in this regard, let us understand some important recommendations of this committee. So, this will form a part of the General Studies Paper 3 under the topic Economic Development. Now, as financial technology or fintech is a growing sector in India, this can be a very important topic for us from the mains examination point of view. So, in this background, let us understand what is meant by this term fintech technology and what are the new innovative products that have been brought out by these fintech companies. So simply it is used to describe new technology that seeks to improve and automate the delivery and use of various financial services. Now these technologies are utilized to help the companies, business owners and consumers to better manage their financial operations and process by utilizing specialized softwares and algorithms that are used on computers and on smartphones. Now, for example, by using the financial technology, a person can buy an insurance from the insurance aggregator. So that is how the insurance aggregator companies are providing options to the customers, etc., by using technologies from the internet. Now, another example of the financial technology are the payment wallets that are present in the country. Now, the world's leading financial technology companies are Ant Financial, Quidian, etc. And in India, there are fintech companies like Paytm, Airtel Payment Bank, etc. Now, what are the new innovative products which have been designed by these fintech companies? So in this background, one of the most innovative product is that of crowdfunding for various businesses or social causes. Now crowdfunding is a way of raising investment or finances from multiple investors. And this process has been simplified by the use of technology by these fintech companies. So crowdfunding is a way of raising debt or equity from multiple investors via an internet-based platforms. So in this regard, the Securities and Exchange Board of India has come up with a definition for crowdfunding. So it has defined crowdfunding as solicitation or raising of funds, that is small amount of funds from multiple investors through a web-based platform or social networking site for a specific project, business venture or social cause. Now you might be aware that several fintech companies are raising funds for victims of floods in various parts of country, especially in Kerala. So this is one of the innovative product which has been designed by these fintech companies. Now second important innovation is that of peer-to-peer lending process. Now this peer-to-peer lending means is that it connects the lenders with the borrowers. And both these lenders and borrowers are individuals who are using these technologies to speed up the loan acceptance process. Now in this peer-to-peer lending, The lenders are not necessarily the institutional lenders, for example, banks or NBFCs. These can be individual lenders as well. And similarly, borrowers can also be small consumers, etc. And these technologies are designed to increase the efficiency and reduce the time involved in the access to credit. Now, another important innovation is in terms of e-aggregators. And these e-aggregators provide internet-based venues for retail consumers to compare the prices and features of a range of financial products, for example, standardized insurance, mortgages, and deposit account products. Now, one of the best examples of these e-aggregators is the Policy Bazaar platform, which allows you to compare various insurance products, etc. So this is one of the new area where the financial companies or the financial technology companies are venturing into. So these are few examples of the innovative products which have been designed by these fintech companies. Now, after understanding some of the innovative products which have been designed by these fintech companies, let us understand briefly the benefits of these fintech companies to Indian economy. So first in this line is the increase in digital payments, and we know that companies like Paytm, MobiKwik, etc. are taking advantage of the rapid increase in use of smartphones, internet connectivity, etc. Further, we know that the introduction of unified payment interface has provided a boost to the payment sectors in India, and that is being leveraged by these fintech companies. Second advantage is that of lending and investment, and we know that it is boosting the peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding, etc. The next benefit is of trade finance, and that is likely to benefit the MSME sectors. Now, one of the challenge which is faced by the micro, small, medium enterprises is the lack of access to adequate capital. Now, these financial technology companies have the potential of providing the platforms to MSMEs to sell their invoices and other receivables at a discount so as to meet their capital requirements. Now, what is meant by this is that, for example, if MSME has sold anything and they have received an invoice of rupees 100, which it will get after some time, what MSMEs will do is that they will sell such invoices to banks like SBI or ICICI, who will buy this invoice at a discounted rate. For example, the banks will buy such an invoice of 100 rupees at a discounted rate. Let's say it buys it at 92 rupees. Now, by buying such an invoice, the banks will get rupees 8 when the invoice is matured. However, the benefit that will accrue to the MSMEs is that it will receive immediately 92 rupees, which can be used by it. So this solves the problem of capital for these MSMEs. Fourthly, we have seen that the fintech companies are emerging as aggregators for insurance and advisory services. And one of the examples of this is paisabazar.com and policybazaar.com, which helps the consumers to choose from spectrum of financial products, for example, personal loans, home loans, credit cards, cars, etc. And last is that of account aggregator services. Now, these account aggregator fintech companies aggregate the financial data of a consumer from different financial service providers and use this data to build analytics and insights to help the consumers manage their financial commitments and goals, for example, bill payments, spendings, budgeting, retirement planning, etc. And in the year 2016, the RBI released guidelines for NBFCs that intend to function as account aggregators. So these are few benefits that are likely to arise if fintech companies keep on growing in India. Now, after this, let us understand the key recommendations of the committee which was formed by the Government of India to study the fintech sector. So while understanding the recommendations of the committee, we will also try to understand what were the challenges that were being faced by the fintech companies and what are the opportunities that are available. Now, first recommendation is regarding the virtual banking system. So in this line, the committee has recommended that RBI should examine the suitability of virtual banking system, and in this system, banks will not need to set up any branches, and in spite of not setting any branches or physical branches, they can deliver full-scale banking services from extending loans, saving accounts, issuing debit cards and credit cards, and offering payment services through their apps and website. So this will do away with the compulsion of setting up physical branches of the banks. Second recommendation is regarding the removal of discriminatory regulatory barriers. And in order to boost the digital payments in India, the National Payment Corporation of India, or the NPCI, should provide non-discriminatory access to fintech firms on par with banks. Now, generally, banking sector which is regulated by the RBI has more advantage as compared to the fintech companies which are being regulated by the NPCI, etc. So, in this line, such regulatory barriers for the fintech companies should be removed. Third is the use of fintech or leveraging the fintech for cyber security. Now, these fintech firms are specializing in the field of cybersecurity and should be encouraged to set up their businesses in India and provide necessary regulatory approvals for expanding their services in the country. And as we have learned, major benefit of using the fintech companies is for peer-to-peer lending because it simplifies the access to credit for large number of customers. And that is why the committee recommends that Ministry of Finance should develop marketplace model of debt financing in India by reforming the present model of P2P lending platforms. Further, it has recommended that it should allow the Mudra Bank to directly fund or co-fund MSMEs through the P2P platforms, and also the government should examine alternative credit delivery channel. Now, as these fintech companies are growing, there are chances that various customers can be duped of their cash. And in such a scenario, there is a need for developing a legal framework for consumer protection. So, in this background, the committee has recommended that a legal framework for the consumer protection should be put in place, keeping in mind the rise of fintech and digital services. Now, as these financial technology companies are growing, there is also a need for development of regulation technology. Now, this is a new field within the financial technology industry that utilizes the information technology to enhance the regulatory processes for these companies. And it puts emphasis on regulatory monitoring, reporting, and compliance. And in this line, the financial sector regulators like RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA must develop standards for the regulatory technology by financial sector service providers to make compliance with regulations easier, quicker, and more automated. And it will enable them to meet their increasingly strict know your customer norms, anti money laundering norms, and will also meet the requirements of counter terrorist financing. And finally, there is a need for development of supervision technology, which is the application of technology by the financial regulators so as to strengthen their regulatory and supervisory role. And in this regard, the committee has recommended that financial sector regulators like RBI, SEBI, IRDI must focus on developing supervision technology, which aims at leveraging the information technology for better supervision of this sector. So these were a few benefits that are likely to arise for Indian economy if the fintech sector grows. However, we have seen the recommendations of the committee which was formed by the Government of India for streamlining and the growth of the fintech sector. Now, after going through this discussion, you should try and answer this question from your mains examination point of view, and you can quote various innovative products which have been designed by the fintech sector. Also, what are the likely benefits for Indian economy and what are the challenges arising out of the growth of this fintech sector. And in the end, you can provide the recommendations which are provided by the Committee of Government of India. With this, let's move to the next article. This article on page number 16 talks about the recommendations of a task force which was constituted by the Reserve Bank of India for online loan sale platform. So this will also form a part of the General Studies paper 3 under the topic economic development. So in this line, let us look at how is the current ecosystem of secondary market for corporate loans operating and what are the likely benefits that will arise out of an active secondary market. And finally, what were the key impediments for the growth of this sector? And finally, what are the recommendations of the task force in this regard? Now, the task force which was set up by the RBI had the terms of references to review the existing state of market for loan sale or transfer in India and also to look at the international experience in loan trading and to make the recommendations for the development of secondary market for corporate loans in India. Now, what is meant by this term secondary market for corporate loans? Now, normally what happens is that the corporates take loan from the banks. However, these banks can decide to transfer or sell such loans to other banks or financial institutions. And these financial institutions can include international hedge funds, pension funds, etc. And there are various benefits associated with the sale and transfer of loans by the banks. So in this line, let us look at the present challenges which are being faced by the secondary market for corporate loans in India. So presently, the secondary market for corporate loans in India involves interbank transactions which include financial institutions, and all these transactions are undertaken on an ad hoc basis. which means that there are no regulations and there is lack of platforms for the sales and transfers of these corporate loans. And all such transactions of sales and transfers of the loans from the banks is being done on an ad hoc basis. So in this regard, the RBI has issued detailed guidelines for the development of secondary market for corporate loans. So let us look at what are the benefits that are likely to arise if India has a active secondary market for corporate loans. Now some of the benefits that are likely to arise include capital optimization. Now what this means is that once the banks have given out loans in certain sectors, they can sell these loans to other banks or financial institutions. And in this case, most of the liabilities of these banks will be transferred to the other banks or the financial sectors. And due to this, the overall liability of the banks could decrease, and this will provide banks new opportunities for lending in these sectors. So this will free up the books of the banks and will reduce the overall liability of the bank. So simply the capital which the banks have invested in these loans will now be unlocked, and that can now be utilized for lending to new fields or new sectors. Second is related to the liquidity management. Now we already know that the infrastructure loans are generally long-term loans. However, the banks have the limitations of providing loans for only a limited period of time. Let's say it is about 5 years. However, the infrastructure projects have long gestation period, including 10 to 15 years of project life. So in such a scenario, the secondary market can help the banks to sell their long-term infrastructure loans to the financial institutions and reduce their asset liability mismatches. So the long-term infrastructure loans which become a liability on the banks can be transferred to other banks and financial institutions, and in that way the banks can reduce their liability. And once their liability decreases and assets are increased, they will have more liquidity in their hand, and this can help them in lending to new projects. Now, third major benefit of an active secondary market is the price discovery mechanism. Now what happens is that if some of the loans of the banks are transferred or sold in the secondary market, their actual price will be known to these banks. And this would facilitate appropriate pricing of future loan assets for same borrowers or same sectors. So this will help the banks in analyzing and deciding the areas in which it will lend, so that the overall risk could be minimized. And the fourth benefit is that of risk management, and the banks can mitigate their potential concentration risk in respect of a specific borrower or a sector. And this is only possible if the banks are able to analyze what is the present value of the loan which it had given in the past. So if the value of the loan which is being sold by the bank is low, it will realize that that sector or that specific borrower is not performing well. And with this information, they will now decide and reduce the risk for the lending to that specific borrower or the sector. And finally, it provides opportunities to the smaller banks. Now, as we know that presently in the secondary market for corporate loans, big players are only involved. And in such background, small banks do not get the opportunity to participate in this large and highly credit-worthy lending exposures. And that is why in such a background, the secondary markets can enable these small banks to participate in such exposures at a later stage. Now finally, let us look at what are the impediments for the growth of the secondary market for corporate loans in India. So these include lack of sufficient number of active participants, lack of effective, reliable and diligent price discovery mechanism, absence of systematic loan sales platform, lack of standardization in loan and transfer documentation, etc. In this regard, the task force set up by RBI has provided certain recommendations. So let us look at the key recommendations of this task force. Now presently there is no regulator for the secondary market of corporate loans. So in this regard, the task force has recommended that there should be a self-regulatory body of all the participants which will finalize detailed modalities for the secondary market for corporate loans, and this will include standardization of documents which are required for such sales and transfers of the loans. Second recommendation is related to the setting up of a central loan contract registry which would act as a centralized platform for auction and sale of the loan assets. So this will be aiming at providing a centralized platform where the players can come together and auction and sell their loan assets. And finally, there is a need for amendments in the regulations which are issued by the various regulators like SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA to enable the participation of non banking entities, for example, mutual funds, insurance companies, and pension funds. So, all these are aimed at relaxing the market or relaxing the norms and regulations for the market of secondary corporate loan sector. Now, after today's discussion, you should try and answer these questions. Answer will be displayed after 5 seconds. The first question reads, which of the following are correct about the RFID technology? The first is that it is a contactless communication technology which uses microwaves, which is incorrect because it uses the radio waves. The second statement is that the RFID tag is to be in the line of sight of the scanner, which is also incorrect. Hence, the correct answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. The next question is from the preliminary examination of 2011 and it reads, the Brahmaputra, Irrawaddy, Mekong, Ganga rivers originate in Tibet and flow through the narrow and parallel mountain ranges in their upper reaches. Of these rivers, Brahmaputra makes a U-turn in its course to flow into India. This U-turn is due to. So the correct answer here is that this U-turn is because of the syntactial bending of geologically young Himalayas. So this is a particular characteristic of the Himalayas which has been created because of plate tectonics and converging of the Eurasian plate with that of the Indian plate. Hence the correct answer is B. The third question is also from the Civil Services examination of 2012 and this reads, when you travel in Himalayas, you will see the following. One is deep gorges, U-turn river courses, parallel mountain ranges and steep gradients causing landsliding. So the question is, which of the above can be said to be the evidences of Himalayas being young fold mountains? So in the geography section, when you will learn about the plate tectonics theory and also about the formation of young fold mountains, you will find that all these are the characteristics of the young fold mountains. And hence the correct answer is D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. The last question is, which of the following statements is or are correct? The first is that under the ethanol blending program, oil marketing companies have to blend ethanol up to 5% in petrol, which is incorrect because the current limit is 10%. The second is that government has recently allowed the conversion of old sugar into ethanol, which is correct. Hence the correct answer is B, that is 2 only.
With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let's move on to the question for the day.